Test, test. That little sheet of paper, and then, yeah. Oh. The one with the blue title on it. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. We'd like to welcome everyone to the August 7th, 2024 Cottonwood Heights City Planning Commission business session. First of all, are there any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose? And none stated from the members of the Planning Commission, and we do have a quorum. What's in order now is our general public comments period. And just as a reminder, this is an opportunity for individuals to make general public comments that do not relate to any projects scheduled for the public hearing under the business item section of this agenda. And we'll cover that a little bit here, that we will give you 3 minutes at the microphone. But if you're going to talk about we do have one business item to take care of today. Thank you. Just as a little bit of preparation, project SPL-24-001, a public hearing and possible action on a request from Ivory Homes for approval of a private gate within the Butler Hills View subdivision at approximately 7496 South Orion View Circle. So we'll now open up the public comment period, and if you're not, if you want to wait, you just let me know. So first we have Nikki Balt, excuse me, Nikki.
Hi, I am a new resident to Cottonwood Heights. My husband and I moved here from out of state last summer, and we live in the Danish Pines community, which is 14 new homes. We are experiencing 2 illegal short-term rentals on our street alone. They have been operating, one has been operating for over a year and a half, one has been operating for at least 6 months. We have gone through many routes of trying to get rid of these illegal short-term rentals, but both homes are working around the system by having their occupants sign agreements that they are staying there 30 days, when in fact they are staying there for an average of 3 to 8 days. We have had instances where in one home, there were at least 25 people staying overnight for multiple days. We've had kids climbing up retaining walls in the back of one of the yards. We've had numerous cars on our street. We call Officer Wendell from the code enforcement all the time. We send her license plates, pictures of the people who are coming and going to prove that they are staying for short-term time periods. This is not something that any of the neighbors on our street want to have. I sat in on your planning commission work session, It sounds like you are looking at opening up this can of worms to expand. This is not something that people want to have happen. These homes on our street are renting for at least $600 to $1,200 a night. So a minor fee of $100 a night doesn't do anything. These people live out of state. They could care less. They don't care what the neighbors feel like. They are trying to work around the system. They've told all their residents or all their occupants to not speak to neighbors or to law enforcement. So anytime any of us approach these people, they refuse to speak to us. This is not acceptable. This is not what my husband and I moved here for. We want to have actual neighbors who are living in these homes. And I don't want to have short-term rentals. Our area is not zoned for this, and it shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Welcome to Cottonwood Heights, and those are, I think you're representative of a large number of people, and we are not anxious to turn this into a complete rental community. So that, well said, and thank you. And Joel? Great. Are you the soft side or the hard side of this conversation?
I'm Nikki's neighbor, if that answers.
Oh,
the
very
question.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
I just like to know who's the good cop and who's the bad cop here.
So
So
Joel Hochhalter.
we're glad to have you, Joel. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
to the microphone.
So I'll try not to go over the same points that Nikki made, but my wife and I moved here and we spent about a year looking for a place to live after retirement. We moved here because our kids are here, our grandkids are here. And we followed the Danish Pine community for a long time because we were familiar with the contractor, Toll Brothers. And we did a lot of research because we didn't want to be in the situation. We came from Las Vegas, Nevada, which is, as you can imagine, probably a short-term rental mecca mess. And we wanted to ensure that we weren't going to be in that same situation. So we looked at all the city ordinances thinking that, the city was going to enforce these ordinances. There wasn't any short-term rentals allowed on this street. Toll Brothers also has a contract that you sign at closing that says this is your primary residence. You can't rent your house, you can't sell your house for 1 year, plus all the city ordinances. So we felt pretty comfortable and we invested well over $1 million. That's going down. And it's not because of the stock market or the Fed's interest rates. It's because of the lack of enforcement of city ordinance. As Nikki said, we've called the enforcement folks. We have my security cameras see the rental across the street. I can give the council hours and hours, day by day, hour by hour of when people come and go. So as far as having evidence not on a website that you can't use per the legislature, we have it. We've presented it. I've sent letters, I've sent pictures of 13 cars parked on our street, which is wide enough for a car and a half. So it pretty much blocks the whole entire neighborhood from any traffic. We don't have 6 or 8 months to wait for somebody to come up with a solution. We don't know who these people are. There's 30 people living in one house. And now we're being asked by the enforcement people to go and speak to the renters. So the city is now asking private residences us to step into the role of law enforcement, to go and do the investigation. Who's liable for when one of the residents goes and talks to maybe one of the crazy people who are packing a gun or just want to have a good fight? Because I've had a couple of them who tried to approach and get in my face. We're being asked to do this by the city because you don't have the resources. So that's one question. The other is, these folks, is that my limit?
Yes.
They don't pay property taxes either, and they've all signed residential exemptions. So the city is losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue.
Thank you, Joel. We appreciate it. Let's see. Tori Horsley. Hello.
I'm Tori Horsley. I know a few of you. A few of you know me. I live in Cottonwood Heights, but I live down on Siesta Drive. But I'm here in behalf of my parents, who Patsy is in the back there, Patsy Young and Robert Young, talking about the Orion Circle and putting.
Tori, we're gonna hit the comment period for that in
Oh.
just a second. We are still in general public comments.
Oh,
So give us just a second here and we're
Okay.
gonna shift to that in just a second.
Okay.
So we're gonna welcome you back to the mic in just a second.
that would be great.
Thank you so much. Marilyn McGill, is this general public comment?
This is in regard to the old mill.
Okay, great.
Is that out of line?
Go ahead. Nope, that is perfect timing. Welcome.
We've been here for 48 years, and I've always been in this Cottonwood Heights area. We love it. I would like to see it remain as a historic, which is the only thing historical that we have to offer. I'd like to see a high school student redesign it in a more useful, smaller scale that could be turned into a park and possibly what's the word, for maybe small concerts or local venues, and keep the design of the original building and keep the historical value, using some of the stones to rebuild it and bring it up to standards. I know the cost is way prohibitive. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Marilyn. That is great and appreciated feedback. Chad Mortensen?
Thanks for having us. This is about the old mill too. I just wanted to share some of my feelings on it. I grew up in Sandy, just a few miles from here, and I've come to appreciate this valley and the rich heritage that we're able to enjoy. When the Cottonwood Paper Mill opened in 1883, just 36 years after the Mormon pioneers entered the valley by descending Immigration Canyon, and 37 years after the Donner Party did the same, it served as a paper mill for the Deseret News, which was founded in 1850. At the time of its construction, the mill was by far one of the largest structures in the south end of the valley. It opened 10 years before the Salt Lake Temple. In fact, if you do the math, the old mill has been standing for 80% of the time between 1847 and today. Most of the rocks of the temple were quarried in and near the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon, just a few miles from the mill. So these stones passed through this area, originally by wagon, for a short time by canal, and eventually by rail line, as did the stones of the Utah State Capitol building. These rail lines leading up Little Cottonwood Canyon are, for the most part, non-existent now. But the old mill, one of the last vestiges of the pioneer era, still stands. The painting of it right over there. I love that painting. I haven't seen it before, actually. Constructed only a handful of years after Brigham Young died in 1877, and during the lives of John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, and Joseph F. Smith. The mill has housed several social events over the years, serving as a dance club in the swinging 20s a century ago, and social gatherings were held there for decades and decades after that. This grand building, though showing a bit of age, means a great deal to me. I pass by it all the time. Of course, I remember going to the haunted old mill as a kid, but as I've grown older, I've appreciated even more the testament that the mill is to the industrious nature of the earliest settlers of Utah Territory. The Benson Grist Mill and some surrounding structures are much smaller than the old mill, and they still stand for the most part in Tooele County and have been restored. It's my great desire and prayer that this gem of the area, the old mill, added to the National Registry of Historic Places in 1971, will be allowed to stand and one day be restored for future generations to marvel about the early days of this valley and how we're all tied together by our common heritage. God bless the old mill. Let her live, because once she's gone, we can't get her back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Okay, I don't believe we do. We have no other public comments, general public comment at this time. Oh, please, we didn't get a comment card from you. Come to the microphone and tell us your name and where you live.
Sorry, I was late coming from downtown. I'm Michael Bowd. I grew up a few miles from here on 6200 South. And so the old mill has been part of my childhood as well, and adulthood. And I consider it a treasure. There's nothing like it in the state. It's kind of the iconic gateway to Big Cottonwood Canyon. And I think it would be a shame for that to be demolished. There are ways of preserving it, and it could be turned into a money-making venue, perhaps receptions in the evenings. Maybe it could be a museum interpretive center during the daytime, or something else that could make a profit or something to maintain it. There are historical sites along the old mill, the trail between 6200 South and Big Cottonwood Canyon that could be part of this interpretive or museum-like legacy that it could serve. But I really think there's nothing like it in our state. It'd be a shame to lose it, and we could never replace it. We don't build buildings like this anymore. So I am in favor of seeking ways to fund restoration. We probably need someone with some deep pockets, but I think it's possible. I think we just need some time. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other general public comments at this time? Okay, we will officially close general public comment, and we will move on to our agenda here. Business item 3.1, project SPL-24-001, a public hearing and possible action on a request from Ivory Homes for approval of private gate within the Butler Hills View subdivision at approximately 7496 South Orion View Circle. We'll turn the time over to staff to present.
Thank you, commissioners. For a brief overview that was also shared in the work session here. Okay, this project represents a request for a private access gate on Orion View Circle. This is located directly north adjacent to the City Hall property here. Orion View Circle is part of the Butler Hills View subdivision. It's a 5-lot subdivision. 3 lots within that subdivision utilize Orion View Circle for access. The other 2 are accessed via Butler Hills Drive, kind of around the block on the other side. There's no cross connection between the 2. The proposal has been made to install a sliding security gate on the private cul-de-sac at Orion View Circle. This is the location, the same general location as a previous gate was located when the property was a single parcel for many years before the development of this subdivision. This portion of the subdivision is private. So as Orion View Circle turns north from the access road to City Hall, that becomes a privately owned and maintained right-of-way cul-de-sac area. The applicant here is Ivory Homes, who is also the developer of this subdivision. The request is fairly straightforward. It's a 6-foot by approximately 39-foot sliding black security or a privacy gate. There's also a proposal to add a pedestrian scale gate on the sidewalk that's directly east adjacent to this right-of-way. Private gates are required to be considered by the Planning Commission on a case-by-case basis, only eligible to be installed on private roadways in the city, which this is. So that is why this item is in front of you tonight. And again, the gate slides horizontally. It does not open or swing open to the north or to the south. The idea is it will be on a track that will slide open to the west and close back to the east over that right-of-way. That is proposed to be installed kind of directly north of the existing property on site. The front property there with the circular driveway on the image is an existing home that's been existing for a number of years there. But the proposed gate is located fully within the private elements of this new subdivision. Let's see, the staff has analyzed this and has recommended approval of this subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall obtain a building permit subject to review by all city departments. That would include, as we discussed in the work session, the police department, particularly for emergency access, and the fire department. We've also added a recommended condition that specifically the fire department review this and everything complies with their standards for emergency access. Typically, they require some sort of box with a key or a code to be able to get in that in emergency situations. We've also recommended a condition that the applicant submit an operations and maintenance manual for the proposed gate to know how maintenance will take place on this over time and how the gate will be, how upkeep will happen there. And then we've recommended a condition that upon any malfunction, the gate shall be programmed to remain in the open position by default until the repairs are made, and then it can begin functioning again. We don't want that to get stuck in the closed position. Several questions were brought up in the work session. The applicant from Ivory Homes is here and I believe is prepared to address some of those questions with you. So unless there are any other questions of staff, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, any other questions for staff right now? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we'll give some time to the applicant here, and you heard our discussion, so welcome back to the microphone. We're always glad to work with Ivory Homes in a collaborative manner any way we can.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, Commission. Thank you also to staff for review and research of this. We've gone over the recommended conditions of this and they're completely okay with it. Forgive me if I didn't take note and didn't catch all the questions during the work session, but I've tried to nail down a few of those. In regards to emergency services, this is a typical with all the operating systems that we would put in for any security gate. We've done several throughout the valley, none in Cottonwood Heights at this time, but they do have knock boxes. And then in some cases, which I don't know if will work here because of our proximity, where they automatically open upon sirens, but we're quite close to the police station. So we may have a different type of operating system here, but all will comply with fire and emergency services code. There was a question about the operation. The main operation will be through remote entry for primary residents. We will have a keypad. It's not in the most ideal place, which would be on the right side or the east side of that road, but it will be on the west side of that road because we own some of the right of way in there where we can put that. So for guests or delivery services, primary residents could share codes with their guests or delivery services through keyless entry, or excuse me, through keypad entry. There was a question as to the maintenance of this. And so we haven't decided yet if we will be incorporating an HOA. It's a little difficult to do an HOA with so few homes just because you have certain statutory obligations for what you do as far as meetings and what you have to file with the state. We may have to do that. If we can get away with it, we will do a private maintenance agreement that is recorded over all 3 lots. We do this all the time when there's just simply shared roads. For example, our homeowners here will have to privately conduct snow removal and trash removal services. So this could be added into that maintenance agreement. We're happy to share that with staff as part of building permit when we do make that election. So it will either be through HOA or through a recorded services agreement on all 3 lots. And then finally, I noticed that where this was brought up also as public comment, that there is retaining on the south, well, I guess on Patsy's lot, which is the one immediately to the west of our private road system. I did go look at that today after I did receive that comment. There is some retaining that will have to go that was outside of our subdivision plan. We initially intended to slope it into there, but with some landscaping that occurred with the parade of homes, we definitely do need some retaining that will occur there. It shouldn't have any effect on the gate. That's what I wrote down as notes. I'm happy to answer any questions that come from the commission or the public. If you intend to invite me back up, happy to do so. Otherwise, I'd just like to invite you all to go look at that model home. It is in the parade of homes. It's pretty neat and it's really close by. So I invite you all to do that. Thank you for your time, Commission.
We'll keep you at the microphone for a second. Let us ask a couple questions before we go to public comment here. So.
I've got one question, and I'm just curious why you feel you need a gate for just 3 homes on a circle. I mean, I just put myself in living there. What would be the advantage of every time I come and go, I got to wait for that 39-foot gate to open and close? It drives me nuts.
I may personally agree with you on that. This was a business decision from the company itself that believes that this is a value to those homeowners, and at that particular price point that they would feel that the security would be a value to them. So
So it can't, this is coming from Ivory, not the current residents.
there are no current residents at
My
this time.
point
Yeah.
is they may, they may just say, let's just weld this sucker open.
Possibly.
The other question I have would probably come under the maintenance agreement, but who then will be responsible for making sure that gate works if it needs maintenance, it malfunctions and all that? I realize that in your presentation, it's supposed to remain open if it malfunctions. I'm no expert on gates, but if it locks at some side at the, I guess it would be at the east side, is the way I'm envisioning the gate from what I've seen, then how does that unlock? Is it just stays there in position and so it really doesn't lock on that side? And if the motor malfunctions, then the motor automatically is going to open that gate?
Yeah. So how it really works is the main gate is a vehicular gate, so it doesn't actually necessarily lock. It's just motor. It's driven by the motor to a final point,
Okay.
right? So theoretically, it could be pulled open. Standard, the operating system does have a method to open up in case of any operation issues. So,
Manually push it, or does the motor?
so the motor's supposed to do that, right? Now, we all understand that these malfunction all the time and are can be expensive for repair. But the vehicular portion will not be a locking thing. So it should theoretically open in case of power loss or something like that. If that doesn't occur, it doesn't lock. That would be pushable. And then there's also and I think this was brought up during the work session, there's also a pedestrian gate on the sidewalk on the east side.
I guess I'm slow, but I don't figure if it's the engine itself or the motor itself that's malfunctioning, you don't have power. I don't see how it's going to open unless
Yeah, no,
unless you push it.
and I'm not an engineer or
Me either.
design the operating systems. That's a standard that we have all the time. We have one that's not too far from here that we did recently in Sandy. And there are cases where there's some operating issue with the actual operating system and the gate opens up. I can't speak with any,
Thank you.
Do you have any plans for assessment fees out the gate to go into escrow for gate maintenance or road maintenance in the space? Just from an escrow agreement?
so I don't know that we would have an escrow in place. I think that in the event that we do this through the maintenance agreement, that would just be collected amongst owners based off that. The more that we get into this, the likelier that we are going to indeed have an HOA that will take assessments that would cover this along with snow removal and trash disposal.
For Mike and Sam, is there any requirement in plat recording or HOAs to have, once we're going through the plat process, or HOA reserves, especially for maintenance?
No, there's not, and there's not a requirement to form an HOA. We typically ask how they're going to manage snow removal and trash pickup to make sure that there's a plan for it. But that I can recall, the city's never mandated that an HOA be formed, simply that a private agreement's in place.
Okay, thank you.
And Peter, some of this is born out of our current experience as a city right now, an entrance feature into a neighborhood, a very expensive entrance feature, and wondering if there would be reserves and if that would, who that would revert to. But as you're talking about the retaining, and as I've watched that property and kind of the elevation change a little bit, and whether that predated you guys, I don't know at what point you guys own the property, but as you talk about retaining and what the possibilities are for what you could do, can you describe that in a little more detail? Just I think we have residents around that property that have been there for quite some time, and we would be anxious to try to do right by them. How would you be a little bit more granular for us about what that would look like?
Sure, and to be frank, this was, I received the public comment today, the same as yourselves, and then was able to just take a look at it today, to recognize that we do need some retaining in a specific location there. Our grading plans were initially approved uh, by city engineering, and it was intended to slope gently into the property where no retaining would be necessary. With the landscaping that had occurred with the parade of homes, especially with some rock ground cover that was installed, it's become pretty eminent, pretty obvious that there will be some retaining. As for what type of structure that would be, I'm not sure. I did, and I'm sorry I didn't take note, but recalling now, the question was who would be responsible to maintain that? That would be 100% within our property. We wouldn't split any property lines with any retainage that would go at that location. So any maintenance or repair of that would be on the property owner.
Terrific. And I appreciate that you guys have done this in other municipalities, that we recognize you guys are a very large builder in this state, and I'll be honest, I love some of the things that you've done and have different feelings about other things that you guys have done. And I always appreciate when you try hard to do the right thing in our city. So
Great.
thank you. Any other additional, please, Commissioner Polson?
Just one more question. I'm wondering if it might be, if it might be better in the long run for Ivory to wait until you actually have occupants on that circle to make that decision. And then Ivory could say, well, we built that into the price of your home and we'll just put it in. Or we could give you a refund of some sort if you choose not to have it. Rather than going ahead with it now and then trying to resolve all these issues that we've been talking about, rather than just wait.
So without going into the details of our private contracts, we have some disclosures that had already spoke about this particular issue, that would be in our private contracts with our buyers. Our intention is not necessarily to install right away. It would actually be helpful to get a little more of the home construction completed prior to this installation. We'll work with planning staff and the timing on our approvals and our permitting to make sure that this happens in a timely way. But yeah, without going into our private contracts and agreements, I can let you know that these disclosures have been set from the beginning, that this could be an option and that Ivory may elect to install this.
Okay, just a follow-up then. I'm trying to understand what you just told me. This is kind of what I heard, is that there is an option in the contract for those who may be purchasing now or purchase them in the future. And they may have an option at that point to say they want the gate, or it still is going to, what I also heard is that I don't want to put it in right now because that would inhibit our construction, but still put it in before we have occupancy of the homes.
Sure, and occupancy may not align directly with all homes being complete. We may likely have occupants while still under construction on different lots. I guess to clarify, our disclosures are to our buyers, saying that Ivory may elect to install this security gate. I can't speak to whether our buyers would value this the same as yourself or myself would. I just won't get into business decisions at that point. But I appreciate it.
Just curious.
No, I appreciate your question.
Other questions right now for Peter? Thank you very much. We may
Thank
bring
you.
you back. Stick around.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are ready for a public comment on this item. And I think I have just one comment card here from Tori Horsley. Welcome back.
I would like to also say that I love the old mill too. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I appreciate Peter, you talking to, and I think some of my comments and questions have kind of maybe been answered and kind of gone over already a little bit. I do have kind of two questions. For that side where we just talked about the retention of that property, where the gate would come open if so, and there might have to be retention even if there's not a gate there, possibly. But I get a little concerned myself for if it's going to be Ivory or it's going to be the new homeowner because as many of the city knows, I don't know if they know me, I know Mike knows me very well. I mean, I was in a lawsuit with the city as well as my next door neighbor over retention of property for 5 years. So I think my parents, if I can speak for you, Mom, is that I don't think that they want to all of a sudden have Ivory leave, sell it to the new person, and all of a sudden we're in this dispute over, well, you've got to retain your property. And, you know, that's one of my comments or questions right there. The other one I have is possible call box would be going, and I realize that is Ivory's property along that east side of my parents' yard. They own up to, I think, the rock. I would think, sort of. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they own, I mean, I know it's kind of a gray area right there. You probably know exactly where it is. I know there's markers out there. Would that call box where there is property that's owned by Ivory and then my parents' property, if that call box is put on there, is there any, I don't know what you want to call it, a setback or any parameters that have to be, or can it be put right on the property line, or just out of curiosity, wondering that, or if there's any rules with that. So, where it would be just kind of on their side of the yard. So I think that's basically all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Tori. Any other public comments on this business item? Okay, we will close public comments on this business item, and what's in order now is discussion among the council. What are your thoughts, commissioners?
I'm not hearing any strong reasons to prevent this from going forward, but I do appreciate the discussion and the concerns for the nearby property owners that need to be carefully considered before construction takes place. I would hope to avoid any future lawsuits over misunderstandings about this. And it seems like that could be taken care of in advance pretty well and avoid complications down the line.
Maybe potentially could be included in the motion, I am imagining. I don't know how that would look, but
Right.
other thoughts?
I agree that I don't see huge concerns either. The ensuring that the property rights and all of that are respected of the neighbors, I feel is important to take into consideration, which I believe it would be, but I think it should somehow be documented.
Commission, could I address what we're doing to resolve that? We've added a note to the building permit file for that lot that the grading issue has to be resolved before the home is finalized. That way it's not tied to the gate. In whatever case, if the gate doesn't ever go through, that condition is on the building permit. So the retention issues that have been observed and brought to our attention just today have a pathway to be resolved regardless of the gate. So we've tied that to the building permit. If you want to tie it to the gate as well, I think you're able to do that, but I just want to let you know what has been done.
Thank you for that, Mike. Go ahead, Commissioner Polson.
I will say this, I'm not against having the gate there. I just think it's poor timing. Who's making the decision right now? It's Ivory that's making the decision. And if Ivory were living in those homes and had to wait for that 39-foot gate to go open and closed all the time and all the other issues that would come with it, and then Ivory could live with it. But if I were one of those who bought the property, I would like to have a say in whether I wanted that gate or not. And so I'm kind of torn. I'm not against the gate. I'm just think the timing is off because Ivory's making the decision, not the owners of the property that will be using it.
But they're the current owners.
So I'm not sure.
Ivory
whether I
is
have
the
an issue.
owner of the property, so yeah.
They get to charge an extra 10% for the gate.
Not fair digging at Peter when he's not at the microphone here. So I have that same maybe a variation on that question. Uh, Based on this request, is there an option if Ivory were to choose to not build the gate, if it was the will of the potential buyers? Please, we'll have you answer the microphone for the sake of the recording.
Yeah, at this point, it has been a decision by Ivory Homes to install this gate.
Go ahead and install. Okay.
Yeah, and we do have currently one under contract, in that is affected by this. And as I was, not very clearly explaining, this was all done through disclosures, understood by our contracted buyer that this was an election that Ivory may pursue.
Okay. Great. So I think in addressing your concern now, Commissioner Polson, they know what they're getting into. They're getting a gate whether they like it or not. So you may have an opinion on whether that's good business practice or not, but the gate, they're getting a gate. It comes with a gate. So if we approve the gate. So do you have thoughts about whether we include it as part of a motion or not?
I think it's pretty safe practice to have that be included with the building permit, as Johnson has mentioned. I think that it's irrelevant to the gate, as long as the gate is to the property line and is engineered appropriately. I don't think it's relevant to this necessarily. It's because retention's retention, and that's more so relevant to building permit.
I agree.
Other thoughts and discussion as we consider this item?
You know, I think one of the main things here is precedence within the city. Moving forward, I think the gate is a great opportunity for the city. You know, I think that Ivory is able to charge a premium, creating security within, the street there. But precedent moving forward, if, any cul-de-sac wants to move forward, create a private road and build a gate. And I guess my main question is, that was brought up by one of the public comments, is setback requirements off of property lines and what the actual precedent or what the actual code is for private gates on property lines. Right now, it's just completely approved by property lines, but I don't know if there's a practice to have requirement of both property owners to agree to that, just because it is a mechanical device that's being installed on the property line. Just for, precedent moving forward, what is kind of guidelines on that? Is there requirement for adjacent property owners that are not occupying?
Great question. Our code is very brief on this. It's just planning commission considers on a case-by-case basis. What I would recommend to address that would be potentially a condition that says if it is on a shared property line, that both owners consent to that. Otherwise, keep the gate and the keypad and all equipment solely within Ivory-owned property to avoid that confusion of, is this on a shared property line?
And it currently is 100% on Ivory property.
As proposed, yes. But that being said, it's not a survey grade plan at this point. But the intention, I believe, is for that to be fully within the private right of way owned by Ivory.
Great, thank you.
And for Mike and Sam, I think that housekeeping, when we get through our parts of the code, that we might add a sentence or two now and then. I mean, just sometime in 2025, that might be worth adding a little bit. So
Surprised you're asking for me to bring you more code updates, because
we love code
I
updates.
always
Sam.
feel a little bad piling on the whole list of them, but the code is a living document. It's meant to be updated and continue to be better. So I'm happy to look into that.
But do we have to wait for a code to be in place to have a condition for this particular gate? Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I was writing it down as a condition for this, that if it is shared property, that both owners need to agree. Okay,
Yeah, I think that's in your purview right now.
okay, thanks.
Are we ready for a motion yet? Okay, who would like to make a motion?
I move to approve project SPL 24001 based on the findings and recommendations listed in the staff report dated August 7th, 2024, adding the one condition we discussed about if that this is on shared property lines, both property owners need to be in agreement.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Anderson, a second from Commissioner Steinman. What's in order now is discussion on the motion. Are we ready for the vote? Okay. Commissioner Steinman,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Shelton,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Polson. Reluctantly, yes, and Commissioner Mills, yes. The motion is approved. What's in order now is item 4.0, the consent agenda. We have minutes from 4.1, June 5th, 2024, and 4.2, July 11th, 2024. Do we need any, first of all, we need a motion, and then we can see if there are any.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion from Commissioner Shelton. Do we have a second?
Second. Oh,
Second from Commissioner Anderson. Any edits or further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda as printed, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have one more motion left here.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn from Commissioner Steinman.
Second?
We have a second from Commissioner Smith. All those in favor of adjourn, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the public for your engagement, and we are very cognizant of your presence and your feedback, and we are not done with these issues.